Founded in 1895 as Thames Ironworks and renamed West Ham United in 1900, West Ham have been a regular fixture in the top flight of English football for much of the last century, but they have never won the First Division or the Premier League. They have won the FA Cup 3 times in fact, in 1964, 1975 and 1980, during what was something of a golden era for the club. We're not so much interested with West Ham's first team as we are with their academy and youth teams in this video though, as we finally answer long-time calls to look at an all-time West Ham Academy 11. The West Ham Academy, sometimes referred to as the Academy of Football, has long been one of the most successful in the English game. The trio of 1966 World Cup winners that came through the Hammers youth ranks prompted some West Ham supporters to ironically crown the club themselves world champions. That might be pushing it, but the East Londoners certainly have plenty to shout about when it comes to young talent, and here is our all-time West Ham Academy 11. Goalkeeper, Ernie Gregory. It's been a while since the West Ham Academy has produced a goalkeeper of real note, meaning we have to go back to a Hammers star of the 1940s and 50s. I must apologise therefore for the fact that we don't have many images of the man in question in our database. Ernie Gregory was a one-club man who joined the West Ham youth ranks from amateur outfit Leytonstone in 1938. He went on to make 415 appearances for West Ham, becoming one of the finest servants in the club's history. Gregory never won a full England cap, but he did play for England B back in 1952. Right back, Glen Johnson. Skipping forward around half a century, Glen Johnson joined the West Ham Academy as a 9-year-old back in 1993. He broke into the first team in 2002, but after just 16 appearances, he became the first signing at Chelsea under the ownership of Roman Abramovich. He set the Blues back a then hefty £6 million, but found himself a little out of favour after 2 seasons at the Bridge. A move to Portsmouth, initially on loan and then on a permanent, proved to be the perfect tonic for Johnson in 2006, and he soon found himself becoming a regular England international. The attack-minded fullback then had 6 seasons at Liverpool before ending his career at Stoke City. Having retired in January 2019, Johnson wasn't always rock solid defensively, but he is a former Premier League Team of the Season inclusion who won over 50 caps for England, and I think is our best option at right back. Centre back, Rio Ferdinand. The finest centre back of the Premier League era, there was immediate expectation surrounding Rio Ferdinand when he first emerged from the West Ham Academy. He read the game brilliantly, he was neat and composed in possession, and he was really strong and athletic. He was touted as the next Bobby Moore, and in some respects, he had even more strings to his bow than the 1966 World Cup winner. Ferdinand played over 150 games for West Ham before making a British record £18 million move to Leeds United. It wasn't until he set a British record transfer fee once again 2 years later though, this time worth a potential £34 million to Manchester United, that we really saw Ferdinand realise all that remarkable potential. He spent 12 years at Old Trafford, winning 14 trophies and making the PFA Team of the Year 6 times. Rio won 81 caps for England, and it ought to have been at least 20 more, and he's an undisputed inclusion in this 11. Centre back, Bobby Moore. Rio Ferdinand may have had a slightly more complete skill set than Bobby Moore, with greater athleticism, speed and aerial ability, but there's a good reason why Bobby Moore will always hold greater standing in the history of the English game. And it isn't just that famous trophy that he lifted back in '66. Moore had a flawless understanding of the game, his positioning and timing was second to none, and he roamed around the back line with an unwavering sense of authority and control. He could also be really firm in the tackle when called upon, he was good on the ball, and a master passer out from the back. Moore joined the West Ham Academy from Barking at the age of 15, and he would go on to become the Hammers' greatest player of all time. He spent 16 years in the West Ham first team, making 647 appearances and winning the FA Cup, the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup and a Charity Shield. As a 4-time Hammer of the Year and Ballon d'Or runner-up, Moore is one of England, not just West Ham's, best players ever, and he's the most obvious inclusion in this entire 11. Left back, Frank Lampard Sr. He may not hold quite the same esteem nationally or internationally, but Frank Lampard Sr. is a bona fide West Ham legend to rival Bobby Moore. He ranks second in the club's all-time appearance charts, 1 place ahead of Moore, and played more games for the club than any other academy graduate. He spent almost his entire career with the Hammers, barring a single season at Southend, playing under Bobby Moore at the end of his career. Lampard was a hard-working, defensively solid fullback who possessed a fierce shot, and you can probably count the amount of times he let West Ham down during his 18 years in the first team on one hand. He only won 2 caps for England, with an 8-year gap between them, but he has to start here. Holding midfield, Michael Carrick. Michael Carrick is one of those players who isn't fully appreciated until he's not around anymore, and what Manchester United would do to have another player with a vision and awareness of Michael Carrick in the middle of the park now. Carrick was part of West Ham's brilliant 1999 FA Youth Cup winning side, and like Rio Ferdinand, he would play over 150 games for the Hammers' first team. He stuck around even when the club were relegated from the Premier League, despite being a two-time West Ham Young Player of the Year and a PFA Team of the Year inclusion, but he did depart for Tottenham Hotspur in 2004. Following 2 years as a star man at White Hart Lane, Carrick made a big money move to Manchester United, where he'd quietly go about his business for the next 12 years. Carrick was rarely regarded as the star, as he played alongside the likes of Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Wayne Rooney and Cristiano Ronaldo, but he was a virtual ever-present in the 7 years he spent under Sir Alex Ferguson, winning the Premier League 5 times in those 7 campaigns. Holding midfield, Paul Ince. Another West Ham Academy graduate who is best known for his exploits at Old Trafford, joining Rio Ferdinand and Michael Carrick on that front, is Paul Ince. Ince was an all-action holding or central midfielder with a terrific engine, real athleticism and a burning desire to win. His authoritative displays in central midfield earned him the nickname The Governor, and he became the first black player to captain the England national team. Having joined the West Ham youth ranks as a 14-year-old, Ince spent just 3 seasons in the West Ham first team, winning the Hammer of the Year award once before being snapped up in a controversial £1 million move to Manchester United. Ince went on to win 9 trophies at Old Trafford, he won over 50 caps for England, and also turned out for the likes of Inter Milan and Liverpool. We think his energy and tenacity in a slightly defensive midfield role in alongside the vision, composure and range of passing of Michael Carrick could be a winning combination. Central midfield, Frank Lampard. His dad has already made this 11, and now it's time for Frank Lampard Jr. to make an appearance. His father may be the greater West Ham legend, but there can be few doubts that Lampard Jr. was the better footballer and enjoyed the more illustrious career. He spent 6 years in the West Ham first team, making a little shy of 200 appearances for the club before an £11 million move to Chelsea in 2001. Lampard would spend the next 13 years in West London, becoming the most prolific and productive goal-scoring midfielder of his generation. He scored a total of 211 goals in 648 games for the Blues, making him the club's all-time record goalscorer. Lampard hit 20 plus goals for 5 consecutive campaigns at his peak, as well as topping the Premier League assist charts on 3 occasions, so it's safe to say he has to be included. Central midfield, Martin Peters. There aren't many central midfielders who can rival Frank Lampard in the goal-scoring stakes, but Martin Peters is a man who isn't far off. A fantastically well-rounded midfielder who Alf Ramsey described as being 10 years ahead of his time, Peters was smart, good on the ball, accurate in the pass, and even a threat in the air. Peters and Lampard are 2 of the finest English players of all time when it came to making really intelligent late runs into the box, and this team would be an absolute nightmare to try and cope with thanks to that. Peters spent 9 years in the West Ham first team, winning the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, but missing out on the 1964 FA Cup final. He enjoyed further success at Tottenham in the early 1970s before becoming arguably Norwich City's greatest ever player in the autumn of his career. Peters and Lampard is a terrifying midfield proposition for any opposition, and they should have plenty of licence to attack with Carrick and Ince in behind them. Attacking midfield, Joe Cole. It's difficult to fully explain to those who never saw him just how good Joe Cole was when he first broke through at West Ham United. When you're talking about a multiple Premier League title winner, PFA Team of the Year inclusion, Chelsea Player of the Year and West Ham Player of the Year, with over 50 England caps to his name as not having fully lived up to his potential, you know you're dealing with a rare talent. Cole was a street footballer who just loved to have the ball. A phenomenal flair player who feared no one, he was sensational in his 150 outings at Upton Park. He followed Glen Johnson to the now free spending Chelsea in 2003, where he spent the next 7 seasons. Cole was excellent at times for the Blues, and as his aforementioned list of honours suggest, he has had an excellent career. He was played predominantly as a winger though, when his real talents were as a number 10 or just in a complete free role, and had he had the shackles taken off him, England may have had a Ballon d'Or winner at their disposal. Centre forward, Geoff Hurst. The last of our 3 1966 World Cup winners, Geoff Hurst, came to the rescue for England following an injury to starting centre forward Jimmy Greaves in the group stages. It would be an understatement to say he seized the opportunity, as Hurst scored a hat-trick in the final, still the only man to do so, as England won their first, and to date their only, world title. The now knighted World Cup superstar spent 13 years in the West Ham first team, scoring a mightily impressive 242 goals in exactly 500 appearances. That makes him West Ham's second highest goalscorer of all time and their record scorer since the end of the Second World War. A smart and instinctive goalscorer with fine poaching instincts, the three-time former Hammer of the Year should have a field day with all the creativity in behind him in this 11. The team, including substitutes and a manager. Moving on to our bench, and our backup goalkeeper is Mervyn Day, who played 237 games for West Ham during the 1970s and is pictured here alongside our number 1 Ernie Gregory. As defensive reinforcements, we have club stalwarts Alvin Martin and Steve Potts, who have a combined total of more than 1,100 West Ham appearances to their name, whilst Martin also won 17 caps for England. Our two finest substitutes are arguably the two midfielders, Alan Devonshire and Trevor Brooking, with Brooking probably the most unfortunate to miss out on the 11 proper. Both are bona fide West Ham legends, former England internationals, and between them they have 6 Hammer of the Year awards to their names, 5 of which belong to Brooking. Finally, as striking options, we can't overlook Tony Cottee first of all. Cottee had 2 prolific stints at Upton Park in the 1980s and 90s, either side, of 6 similarly impressive campaigns at Everton. Joining him is fellow former England international Jermaine Defoe, who bagged close to 1 in 3 for the Hammers before signing for Tottenham in 2004. Cottee had a far greater West Ham record, but Defoe had the better international record, scoring 20 goals from 57 caps for England. So that's it for our starting 11 and substitutes, and in charge of the 11, it's hard to overlook Harry Redknapp. Even though I think he has been quite drastically overrated at times during his managerial career, Redknapp was a product of the West Ham Academy. He managed the club for 7 years, winning the 1999 Intertoto Cup, and he enjoyed further success at Portsmouth and Tottenham. To recap, our West Ham Academy 11 reads like this: Ernie Gregory, Glen Johnson, Rio Ferdinand, Bobby Moore, Frank Lampard Sr, Michael Carrick, Paul Ince, Frank Lampard Jr, Martin Peters, Joe Cole, and Geoff Hurst, with a bench made up of Mervyn Day, Alvin Martin, Steve Potts, Alan Devonshire, Trevor Brooking, Tony Cottee, and Jermaine Defoe, and all managed by the ultimate wheeler dealer himself, Harry Redknapp. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. Feel free to give the video a like if you enjoyed it, in fact please do, and make sure you're subscribed to HITC Sevens, and head over to www.englandsgreatestdefender.com to have your mind blown by the best football book ever written.